think a long time ago, we made drugs into this huge thing, and we've made it so illegal, and we've made it such a national issue with that tough on crime stance. I mean, you can't get elected if you don't profess to be tough on crime.
First, we have to join together to ensure that drug dealers are punished swiftly, surely, and severely.
You can't stay elected if you don't do things to be tough on crime.
It's to toughen sentences, beef up law enforcement, and build new prison space for 24,000 inmates.
You know, nobody can afford to be the first guy to say, wait a minute, we can't afford what we're doing, let's do something different.
I thought I would talk to targets of the war on drugs, drug dealers and users and their families, and hear a horror story about this system that was out to get them, and how much the drugs had hurt them, but then how much the drug war had hurt them more. I thought I would get that from them, and I thought from the people who worked inside the criminal justice system, cops, jailers, judges, and so forth, I would hear the opposite view, that we can't lock up enough people, and that these people are guilty and should be punished this way, and if anything, the punishments should be more severe. Nothing could have been farther from the truth. What I found was that, first of all, everybody I talked to was a victim. Whether you were a direct victim of the war on drugs in its pointed aggression, or whether you were a victim of having to do with your life the meting out of that punishment. To be a cop in a system that is not actually just and is not actually improving public safety is to go to work hopelessly. To be a jailer within a system that incarcerates the poor needlessly and recklessly and destructively and does not and leads to increased recidivism, so that we see the same people revolving dooring back into the jail who you let out last week or right back in here. That person knows they are failing at their function. Their function within the system of corrections is not correcting anything. After hearing so much about the failure of the drug war and the enormous harm it does, I wanted to better understand what drives it. Far from the front lines of the war, I discovered a vast and less visible world of people who in their own ways play a part.
This chair, in comparison to other types of restraint chairs, is the most humane. The person in the chair can breathe very easily, and it's not restrictive.
What we are seeing in our system of mass incarceration is simply the most strident example, perhaps, we have in American life of putting profit before people, of having the prerogatives of ruling elites run roughshod over basic human rights and dignity. A member of Congress, in order to get elected, has to rely on two things. He needs corporations to bring jobs to his district, and he needs money in his party's campaign coffers. So in order to curry that favor, he looks for ways within legislation to constantly ratchet up the system into greater and greater severity so that those corporations can rely upon the steady flow of human bodies that they need to survive and to grow. And so it's a business based on the incarceration of your fellow people, and the Congress people are the ones who keep skewing the laws to be more and more draconian so they can keep a very reliant system of profit.
The thing with the war on drugs is, and the question we have to ask is, not why is it a failure, but why, given that it seems to be a failure, why is it persisting? And I'm beginning to think, maybe it's a success. What if it's a success by keeping police forces busy? What if it's a success by keeping private jails thriving? What if it's a success keeping a legal establishment justified in its self-generated activity? Maybe it's a success on different terms than the publicly stated one.
I say he's a criminal. Let him go to prison.
I have a life and 30-year sentence.
20 years for drug trafficking.
I have life without parole for 3 ounces of methamphetamine.
Of the 2,600 people I've sent to federal prison, I've seen 3 or 4 kingpins. We're incarcerated poor people who are drug addicts.
You're watching poor, uneducated people be fed into a machine like meat to make sausage.
Poor people in America are changing color in a lot of ways. More and more white people are becoming poor. There's fewer and fewer jobs. There's more and more economic disenfranchisement. And so as a result of that, you start to see a system whose complexion is democratizing a bit. I don't want to pretend that it's now targeting whites on par with black people, but it is the case that what it's revealing is that it's ultimately driven as much by class as by anything else. And so I do think we'll see more and more of that in the times ahead, because what a nice thing for the drug war to be able to say, I'm not racist, and there's not really an argument for classist in the same way, and so it can just now start to consume new people.
You will be put away and put away for good. 3 strikes and you are out.
The victory on Prop 36 was that we were able to find in California that 68% of voters were so fed up by the three strikes law that they've now voted in a change, that the third strike that's going to put you in jail for the rest of your natural life has to be serious or violent. And what that does is not only make sure that of the people who are now in prison, some 3,500 will get their sentences revisited and no longer be facing life sentences. What an amazing exoneration that is. But at the same time, thousands more coming down the pike won't be treated unjustly as they were in the past. So it's a wonderful moment where California, which in many ways led the country into the darkness of excessive sentencing, can now begin to lead the way out by showing a step towards sanity.
Somebody down the road said drugs are bad. Okay, there's no argument there. But think about where we are 30 years later.
I was wondering what your opinion was of entertainment aimed mainly at the middle classes based on the drug war. So I'm sort of thinking of The Wire, I guess, but I'm also thinking of shows like Breaking Bad, which are obviously very human stories, but they do take the drug war as an entertainment product.
I remember when The West Wing was a popular show on American television, and I would sit listening to people talk about The West Wing, and I kept getting, are we talking about the real White House or the West Wing White House? And at a certain point, I got so upset about this because people would spend hours talking about this fictional White House, and they wouldn't spend seconds talking about the real one. So I used to say, if we would just take 10% of this conversation and talk about the actual White House, we would live in a different country. We would revolutionize the country in an hour because so many of you apparently have so much passion for politics. So there's an importance to shows like The Wire and Breaking Bad, keeping something at the top of everybody's radar and keeping it and breaking into people's minds and breaking into their imagination. But if that is not followed by verite, real reporting on the ground that then connects the real to the fictional, and then also by activism that seeks meaningful change and refers to The Wire as just one more piece of evidence of the popular appetite for change, of the popular appetite for a viewpoint that's critical. These things have to be deployed to make meaningful change, or they become little efforts at letting steam out of the pot, and we feel we've done our politics and we can switch off the TV and go back to bed to a new day tomorrow.